great Mr. Lou Dibella on the line.
Oh, you
And
heard?
I'm going to let YouTube champion actually start out the conversation.
Hey, how you doing, Lou?
Gentlemen,
Hey, how you doing, sir?
how you doing, K9? Good to talk to you guys.
Man, good to talk to you, brother. Good to talk
I'm
to
well,
you.
brother. I'm well.
You will? Okay. Yeah, man, I know you're a busy man, so I thought we were going to be able to catch you tonight. So I'm happy that you know what I'm saying, you spent time with us tonight.
No, it's my pleasure. I've been telling you, I've been meaning to, but I've been underwater between all these crazy situations I've been in the middle of. But at least now everything seems to be resolving and heading in the right direction. So.
Yes, I'm happy. You
look, by the way, Regis never wanted to pull out of any tournament, and but here's the issue: the guy's got to fight. You have to know the money's there. You have to be comfortable that you're going to get paid, and the tournament's had a lot of issues, and I'm happy to say they appear to be at least now willing to resolve stuff. So I think we're heading toward a situation where the issue is going to get resolved, and hopefully. Regis will be fighting Josh Taylor. We'll know by the end of the week. But I think it's heading, in the right direction. And we just had some concerns that we had to get worked out, and we've been working them out. We've been in the process of working them out. I mean, we had to file. We filed a lawsuit, but that's not something we wanted. He never wanted to pull out of the tournament. We never wanted, to cancel the fight. But luckily, people have been communicating since we filed the lawsuit, and it looks like we're heading to a situation where things should be worked out. I'm crossing my fingers, and we should know more in the last couple of days. And then finally today, it looks like we worked out the Triple G and Sergey Derevyanchenko fight, and it looks like that's going to happen October 5th at Madison Square Garden. There's supposed to be a press conference on Thursday.
Oh, that's wonderful. So there you have it on the Dawg Pound. You get it from the Dawg Pound. Lou Dibella himself in person. That's what I'm talking about. That's good stuff, man. Good information. I don't got to go to Boxing Scene to get it. I got it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, well, I'm an old horse, but I guess you got it from the horse's mouth.
Right.
So what's up with you, Kane? I haven't talked to you in a while, bro. Everything good?
Yeah.
How long you been doing this podcast?
Man, I've been doing this podcast with my partner, James. Actually, James has been doing a podcast, for a few years now, some years. And I just got aboard with it. I told him, I said, man, we need to go ahead and, it was the Pugilist Corner. I said, let's go ahead and change it to the Dawg Pound. I remember being current champion, and I would always get on the show, and I said, man, you're going to blow this mug up. And it caught fire. It caught fire, and since I've been on it, it's going to caught more fire.
Well, I'm good to be on with you guys, and I'm glad you're doing this. You're a true veteran, man. You know the game. You've been in it a long time, and I'm sure you and your partner got some good observations and insights. So,
yeah.
I'm sure it's a good podcast for boxing fans to be listening to, and I'm really happy to be joining you guys tonight.
Oh man, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. I had Andre Ward on the show a few months ago. I had tweeted, about how the show was and this and that. He said, man, I can't be on your show, and I said, definitely you could be on the show. So. We got a lot of audiences, just from great guys like you being on the show. So we done had, Devin Haney,
that's great.
You, Clarissa Shields. I mean, it's taking off. Yeah, it's
glad to hear that, man. So,
yeah.
anything you want to talk about, you got me. So let's. What's the first question or the first topic we got going here?
Man, listen. All right, hey, Tevin Farmer. Last one. Let me go, James, and then you got him. Tevin Farmer, Tank Davis. What's happening? What's going on with that situation?
I think it's inevitable at some point those guys will fight, but I think it's pretty clear based upon where we are right now that it ain't going to happen in the next few months. I don't know how big a deal that is because I still think there's big fights available to both guys.
Yes.
Clearly, one thing that we've been fighting. Tevin's done his last 4 fights on DAZN. They made him a really nice deal, and they were able to give him 4 fights in 1 year, which is unheard of. How many guys defend their title 4 times in 11 months? That's sort of unusual. But if they can deliver a big fight at DAZN, and, we've given them some names, any unification or Jojo Diaz, which I think would be a real big fight for Tevin, and the money's right, then we're probably going to stay at DAZN and do that fight. Tank Davis and Tevin be a terrific fight. DAZN and Eddie Hearn made a real big offer to get Tank Davis over to DAZN. Tank and his people weren't interested. They made a counter offer to Tevin to come across and fight at PBC, fight the fight there. I think whenever you have two sides of a fight and like the two numbers are as far apart as the two numbers were here, then it's probably not likely that fight's going to happen right at that moment.
That's right.
And then the other thing, just in fairness, like Tevin did 4 fights in a row with DAZN. DAZN had an ability to match his next fight. So if they offer something good enough, we're not going to walk away if it's a fight that we as a team we agree to and we like. But look, the one good thing about Tank and Tevin is they're both young champions, and it's not like the fight's going to get smaller, and I believe they'll meet. I think much more likely next year than this year, though.
Okay, all right, makes sense. James, go ahead, James.
I just wanted to ask you about a couple of situations, Lou, and I'm like K9. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight. But getting back to some of the health situations that we've seen in the ring, speaking especially of last week's fight, the cut that we had on who was it? Magdaleno's eye.
Mm-hmm.
When they talk about guys, like having to stay out, 6 months for the cut to heal, but the fighter will probably be back in the ring in 4 months. We know that you got a very short window. How do you handle things like that? I mean, 6 months to a fighter, that he loses his audience.
No, it's a long time, but you know what? It also just depends on the look. First of all, thank God no one has ever died of a cut, right? The problem with cuts is they tend to reopen, particularly if you have a cut like he had, or you had a cut like Badou Jack had, that savage cut he had in the fight with Marcus Brown, where you could see his skull almost. I mean, the problem with those kind of cuts is if you don't give them an adequate time to heal, they open up real quickly, and then you're looking at a situation in your next fight where your fight might get stopped in the first couple of rounds. So you don't want to see a fighter lose, 6 months of his career over a cut, but sometimes it's just necessary. See, to me, the much bigger issue is guys will get knocked unconscious, and they'll give them a 45-day suspension or a 60-day suspension. And basically, if you get only a 45-day suspension, you're allowed technically to fight in a fight 50 days later, 46 days later. That means you're probably going to the gym and sparring to prepare in a matter of days, and you're never recovering from the concussion. Or to me, that's the much more dangerous situation. Like, where it's not a cut, because like I said, no one ever died from a cut. No one ever died from a low blow. Where guys get permanently damaged is shots to the head and concussions and either knockouts or prolonged beatings over a lot of rounds. And I'm sort of going at it from a different direction, which is we don't put significant enough we're not significant enough with the amount of time we keep a guy out of a ring when he's been concussed. Because you shouldn't be able to go right back to the gym and be sparring a couple of weeks later, and you shouldn't be in a prize fight 50 days after you're knocked unconscious. And that to me is, the much greater concern. We got to take a good look in general at what's going on with health and safety in boxing, because like you have states where you need regular CAT scans and MRIs where the testing is significant, but then the majority of states in the United States, all you need is an eye test and an AIDS test. So if you go to a state where there's good medicals and they won't license you, you can go find a state that'll just let you walk into the ring basically with a blood test. And a guy that's been knocked out 6 out of his last 10 fights, or a guy that's got a record, even if his record is positive, even if he's got more wins than losses, if you've been knocked out 12 times, 14 times, 16 times, there's a very good likelihood you shouldn't be fighting anymore. And we're not adequately protecting those kind of situations. And you looked at, remember a couple of weeks back, we lost 2 guys in 1 week. We had 2 deaths in the ring, 2 deaths in 1 week. Now, one of them, the one where Buddy McGirt stopped the fight and the kid was getting beaten up, maybe that fight could have been stopped even earlier, and maybe the kid wouldn't have had the same injury. But that was more of a tough one to call. I mean, he was fighting back, he was getting beaten up, but he wasn't it wasn't completely and utterly one-sided. I thought it should have been stopped a little bit earlier, but from all the referees are taught that if a guy's punching back, the corner wants to give the guy the opportunity to continue. I think we have to change our general attitude. If you're getting your ass kicked and you're not going to win a fight, and you've lost every round, and you're in the 7th, 8th round, and it's clear you're not strong enough to hurt the other guy or knock him out, if not the corner itself, then the referee or the doctor, there's got to be a way of stopping that kind of fight, because nothing good comes out of it continuing. The guy has no chance of winning. A puncher's chance when you're not a puncher, it's not really there. If you're down 7 or 8 rounds to nothing, and you've been knocked down a couple of times, and the only way you're going to win is a knockout that's not going to come, why let you continue? I mean, it's no great victory to go the distance if you get your brains beaten in, And I was talking about those 2 deaths in the ring. The second one was totally avoidable. Guy was already suspended. He got his ass kicked in Germany all over the ring, and they put him on a 45-day suspension. And before the suspension was even over, the guy's father, who was his trainer, put him in a fight, and the kid died. And if you watch the fight, they were holding him up in the middle of the ring. It was a draw. He actually he didn't get beaten up. The fight was scored a draw, but his cornermen were holding him up when he was basically dying and lifting his hand in the air like he won. And then they announced the draw, and then before they could get him back in his corner, he had collapsed and was dying. We got to do a better job. We got to protect fighters better than we're doing, and we got to change health and safety laws and regulations so that they're more protective of the fighter. You shouldn't be victimized because you got courage. You shouldn't die in a prize fight because you're too proud to quit. We got to do better to protect the warrior from sustaining the kind of damage that ends his life or ruins his life.
Yeah, I remember all the criticism that Buddy used to take about stopping fights. People used to say, you stopped the fight too early, and that, then, now you kind of see why Buddy, does some of the things that he does.
Look,
Look,
Jack.
I've been at multiple. I'm sorry. Continue, Ken.
No. I wanted to say this while I was on the tip of my tongue. I don't want to forget. But like you were saying, if a guy doesn't have a chance, then go ahead and stop the fight if he's taking a lot of punishment. What are you doing in a situation where a guy's taking punishment, but he has a chance, but then he ended up like Adonis Stevenson did?
That's a tougher one, man. I mean, that becomes a tougher call, particularly because it's hard to predict where a guy's really getting beaten up or hurt. You know what we got to do, though? Nobody knows better. You've been a fighter. You've been in the ring. When you're hurt, you know it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And right now, I think a lot of times fighters get hurt, and they're concerned about not quitting, about showing courage, about trying to go the distance.
That's true.
If you're hurt and you're hurt, live to fight another day. It's
Absolutely.
not a disgrace to go back to your corner at the end of the round, or even to call for the doctor because you don't feel well. If you're in the middle of a round, then you start getting double vision. If you're in the middle of a round and your head starts throbbing and it's not normal, you're not used to it.
Yeah.
If you start feeling dizzy or you start feeling like you're not right, you don't owe it. You owe your greatest duty to yourself and your family, man. You don't owe it to a fan. You don't owe it to the promoter. You don't owe it to the people that are sitting in the arena. You don't owe it to them to kill yourself for their enjoyment. You don't owe it to them.
Yep.
If you know you're not right, check out. There's nothing that ain't quitting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't want to see a guy losing a fight and looking like he's just not trying. you've seen situations where you could look at a guy and you could say, "Oh my God, I didn't like that," because it looked like a guy quit, where there wasn't really a beating being given. He was just frustrated.
Yeah.
Like a no mas kind of situation is one thing.
Yeah.
But a situation where you're taking a lot of punishment and you don't feel right, that fighter shouldn't feel like he has to think twice about pulling out of that, ending that fight. Like if you don't feel well, if you've taken some damage, if your head's bothering you, if you feel dizzy, if your eyesight is affected, same way a guy's playing in a football game and he knows he's got a concussion, he goes off to the sideline. If a fighter knows he's hurt in the fight, check out. And anybody that criticizes you for doing that, shame on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that's got to be part of the answer.
That absolutely.
That's got to be part of the answer.
Hey, Lou. You know what, Lou? I remember some years ago, I lost to a guy named Joe Julio. So I took the fight on 3-week notice. I lost 36 pounds in 3 weeks. So I didn't have nothing. So he was hitting me so hard, man. I was like, when the referee asked me did I want to continue, in my mind I was like, no, but I couldn't stop because I didn't want people to think that I was a quitter.
Yeah, but you know what, man? That might have been, look, every fighter who's had a career like yours, every fighter that's been a champion or been in the ring for a long, long time, had a long career, has taken damage. Everyone.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a rare exception.
Yep.
Floyd Mayweather didn't get hit that hard that many times.
Right.
But the average, even champions, man, even guys that have had great careers have been knocked down, have been hurt, so, that's the kind of fight that later in your life, later in your career, maybe you would have been happy that you would have ended it a couple of rounds earlier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And luckily, you didn't sustain permanent damage in that fight.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like, I remember that fight, and you were dead in the ring almost from the beginning.
There you go.
You were dead at the weight.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of fight too. And by the way, the weight loss thing is another fucking issue.
There you go.
And a lot of times injuries come with those swift losses of weight. Like, it's a double-edged sword, but I wonder if there were same-day weigh-ins, at least people have to be more honest about what fucking weight class they're in.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
a guy that goes in and weighs in, a guy that weighs in every fight and makes the weight, but then gains 20 pounds in the next, 12 hours or overnight, that's not healthy. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
And also, a guy shouldn't walk in. If it's a middleweight fight, one guy shouldn't walk in the ring at 165 and the other guy walks in at 190. You know what I mean? Because I don't care that you weighed in at the same weight class the day before. When you walk in that ring, you're not the same weight class.
Yeah, that's true.
And,
that's true.
Maybe we got to also take a good look at weight gain and weight loss, because that's a big connection to brain injury. When you dehydrate yourself, your brain is in your head and it's surrounded by liquid, by water.
That's right.
And it's that liquid to some extent that protects your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're super dehydrated, there's not the liquid in your body. And when you get hit and you're dehydrated, your brain moves around in your head more. And that's really dangerous. So, we got to take a good look at because, here's the thing about boxing, man, almost more so than any other professional sport. Boxing's one of those sports where the rich get really, really, really rich. And most other people, even good quality fighters that have, competitive careers with winning records that fight on television, the majority of guys don't get wealthy. The majority of guys don't retire with enough money to live the rest of their lives. And if you're going to have that kind of career, you should at least walk away able to support yourself later because you still have your health.
That's right.
Yeah. Because if you don't have your health, the rest of it doesn't matter.
That's true.
I don't care who you are, particularly if you're not a heavyweight. You really probably shouldn't be fighting when you're about 40. No. And God willing, most of a guy's life is, or a good, at least half your life occurs when you stop boxing, and often more than that. And if you're not healthy enough to enjoy it, and you're not healthy enough, to go on and have a work and be productive after boxing, I'm not so sure that boxing career is worth it.
That's true. That's true. James?
Hey, great stuff, Lou.
Hey, that's Lou.
I'm going to take you back, though, man, because, you're talking about old horses. I'm a little older than you, probably a few decades, but Lou, 30 years ago today, we had Sweet Pea against Jose Ruiz, fight 2, I believe it was. Do you remember that fight?
Was that the one he was robbed, or was that the second one?
That was the second one.
That's the one he dominated.
Yeah, that's the one he was at his best.
Yeah, I mean, he was, in my mind, one of the greatest fighters who ever placed on gloves. And Pete had a lot of problems, man. I mean, he liked the party. He was a fun guy. He was a great time to be around. Look, he was a great guy to party with. I mean, he was so much fun to hang out with. But he had a lot of demons, man. He partied really hard, and he partied throughout pretty much his whole career. You know, it's almost unbelievable to imagine how great he would have been if he didn't live and party so hard. You know, because he already, in my mind, was one of the very best that ever placed on gloves. You know, but he literally could have been one of the top, 2 or 3 guys that ever boxed. I mean, that's how good he was.
Oh, wow.
You know, the first Ramirez fight, the scoring was ridiculous. If you watch the Chavez fight, he played with Julio Cesar Chavez. I thought he won in that fight 10 rounds, and then they managed to rob him. He really was, in my mind, one of the greatest fighters I've ever seen, and capable of doing anything. And it's underestimating how great he was to call him like just a great defensive fighter. He was a great fighter all the way around. He had a complete game. He was a great fighter all the way around. But his defense, he was one of the greatest defensive fighters ever. I mean, his defense was like amazing. If you were a boxing fan, you could sit there and enjoy just watching this guy's defense because he made people look silly. His defense was almost like offense. Like I remember a round, and I'm trying to think of who the opponent was, but I'm spacing out, where the crowd was like standing up applauding, and I don't think Pete threw a punch the whole round. It might have been Cardona. The guy Cardona he fought. But there was a round in the fight where the other guy threw like 30 punches and never landed a single punch. Like nothing landed. Right. And everything missed badly, and he was moving and he was feinting and he was moving his head and he was having fun with the other guy and the crowd just started cheering because the other guy couldn't touch him. And that's how great he was.
Kind of like Willie Pep.
Yeah. Yeah, he had some Willie Pep that charisma, but Sweet Pea was in a class all by himself.
Oh yeah,
he was amazing, man. He was an amazing fighter, and he was a good dude too. Really good guy.
Yeah, I said that because didn't Willie Pep win around one time without even throwing a punch?
Yeah, well, Willie Pep was another one. I mean, he was a defensive genius.
Yeah, and
Pete had that same thing. But I'll never forget something, man. I was at a fight. He was fighting Diabolis Hurtado, and I don't know how well he prepared for the fight. He just didn't look like himself. He looked like flat for a lot of the fight, and he was definitely losing. I mean, it was like late in the fight, around the 10th round, and I was thinking to myself, this thing's over. Like, if he doesn't knock this kid out, this fight's over. Yeah. And the amazing thing was he had already signed the contract for the De La Hoya fight next. So he needed to win to fight De La Hoya and get all that bread.
Right.
And after 10 rounds, he needed a knockout to win. And I went to the corner, and who's my guy from Houston? Ronnie Shields was in the corner, and Ronnie said, "Pete, man, you need to knock him out. Like, you need to knock him out." And Pete was like, "Yeah, I know." And boom, he comes out the next round. What does he do? He knocks him out.
Right.
Now, Purnell was not Deontay Wilder. Purnell was not Gervonta Davis.
Right.
I mean, he wasn't a puncher.
No.
He could punch, he could do everything, but he wasn't a puncher at all.
Right.
But he knew what he had to do, and he went out there, and he knocked out a really good fighter.
Yeah.
And I remember, leaving the arena that night thinking to myself, man, this guy's Superman. Like, this guy's a great, all-time great. Like, to pull that out when he absolutely needed it, not being a puncher, but needing that knockout and going out and being able to get it against a world championship class guy. I mean, that was Pernell Whitaker.
Did he send the man through the ropes that fight? Did he send him through the ropes?
I think so. I think it was a pretty emphatic knockout. I mean, he went out there and he hurt that guy in that round. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, Lou, thank you so much, man, for coming on and spending some time with us tonight. We missed you having you around, man, but we know you got so many things going on. Hey, why don't you let everybody?
Well, it's nice to talk to you, James. Nice to meet you. We haven't spoken before, I don't think, on the air. And I mean, K9 and I go back a long time. That's my man. So, anytime any guys want to talk about anything, and I'll make myself available. It might take a week or so to schedule me, but hey, K9's good people, and I enjoyed this spending a little time with you tonight, and I look forward to talking to you guys in the future.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lou.
Any social media you guys got?
Well, I mean, the only social media I really do, and it's I sort of like it because it's not only boxing. I got to admit it. I don't use it only for boxing, but I like Twitter, and it's @LouDibella on Twitter, and you can catch me there. And I'll say the one thing: I think what you see is what you get from me on Twitter. I think I tend to be myself. So it's @LouDibella on Twitter, and thank you guys for having me.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you, Lou. You have a great evening.
I'm gonna bring my son to you.
Hey, I look forward to it, man.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
okay, Lou. Yeah.